So let's get started. Let me introduce myself. Hopefully you all know me. I just give the talk. I'm Jin Yang. I'm from University of Sydney. And together with me is, do we have only one or two? Yeah. So my partner in crime, introduce yourself.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Jong Park from KAIST Korea, and I'm usually doing the single cell and spatial omics research on tumor microenvironment. So I guess that's why I'm here today to discuss about the spatial and cancer session. So yeah.
Okay, so, well, I was wondering what do I talk about because I was there at the spatial biology session yesterday, and the first thing people talk about is spatial biology and cancer. So if you think about this, this will just be part 2 of the same discussion. But let's see. Now, unfortunately, we won't be able to show you the results, but I would like this session to be a little bit more interactive, and also for everyone who is joining us online. I thought it's hard for you to actually get a say in it, but through Menti, here's your say. So if you have used Menti before, you go to menti.com, and you can say the user code 45845549, or there's the QR code. What is the first question? Okay. So the first question is, have you opened up the first question?
Yes, it's working.
The first question is get to know the community. We are all here, people are silent, only the loud people get to have a say, like Elle. But, so I'm always concerned that it's really important to ensure inclusivity in our discussion. So we also want to get a sense of how diverse our community is. So please come forward. If you want to stay at the back, click on thing. We will, in the report, tell people who is in the audience, but I could actually say most of us, whoa, are computational scientists, a few biotechnologists here, let's see, a few wet lab people. So currently I have about 25 people. Why we got more than 25 people? Let's get your phone out. Tell me who you are. Okay, good to see we all have clinicians here. Oh, the numbers are going up. We're pushing towards 30. What's your estimate, mate, to the cloud? Think we're getting there?
I think it's maybe 10 more people to start.
See, he's amazing.
Okay.
His
Up.
estimation. Brilliant, brilliant. Are we getting online people? We just want to know. So we actually have a crowd where it's, I would say, relatively, well, I wouldn't call it evenly divided. Computational people winning out. Okay, so there's a lot of people who are interested in computation, and there's also quite a few people interested in, generation. So I think it's actually fantastic. Oh, what happened? Did I do something? Okay. Okay, so thank you everyone. I will just read out the number that will give you a sense of who is here. So we have around 5 biotechnologists, physicists people, 15 people who are wet lab biologists, the data generator, 29 people who are in computational, so computational biologists, bioinformatician, mathematician, and so on. And then 1 person is in medically trained. So, fantastic. We know, I wonder who you are if you don't, but, we will love your opinion. Okay. Now, so that gives you an idea. So this is what was shown yesterday to talk about is spatial technology ready for prime time, and it lists all this technical challenge. I just have this slide here really just to link the conversation. Just want you to remind yourself a little bit and remember the conversation we have yesterday and how we're going to move forward, right? So just to keep in mind, what are we hoping to get out of this 1 hour is we're hoping to see whether we could get out or formalize a flagship project for HCA Asia. Okay, so I'm going to pass over. Do you want to talk a little bit about, just to get a sense of background, spatial and cancer?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Jean, for gathering all the crowd here. And actually, Sham just asked me to highlight just one thing from yesterday's conversation. Please go to this QR code link and please participate in survey because they really want to hear from you about how should we build the HCA spatial consortia. And when we talk about the spatial biology, it is mostly linked with the cancer because it is the easiest organ that we can collect the tissue from. We can get FFPE or fresh frozen sample from cancer and adjust normal. So it has a good opportunity to not only look into the disease, but also take a look into the normal tissue and how the architecture looks like in the accompanying normal tissue. So this diagram shows a lot of things that we can do with the spatial biology in cancer samples because tumor microenvironment, of course, you know it's highly heterogeneous. So by looking them into, with the spatial toolkits, we can look into the correlation patterns and how the cells are really interacting with each other, what kind of regulatory rules are there. And then in Asia, there has been also multiple bioinformatics studies, mostly led by the Professor Jong, to collect all the pan-cancer data sets and collect it into one big entity. So we can think about expanding it, not only from this public analysis, but by generating the data ourselves and making some big Asian cancer atlas. And one of the similar projects that is going on in the United States is H10, the Human Tumor Atlas Network, funded by the NCI. And as you can see here, what kind of data they are collecting, they are heavily focusing on collecting the spatial omics samples from multiple tumor types. But then, because we are in HCA Asia and we are now discussing about the potential flagship project, so what is peculiar about Asia, and is there any meaningful geographical or epidemiological feature in cancer, which is people usually believe that it's a genetic disease, it's driven by the driver mutations. But in this seminar book from Dr. Dor and Peto, published in 1981, show that actually cancer is an environmental disease. They have looked into the people who migrated into the new environment, and then they discovered that the cancer prevalence patterns actually follows the environment. And if so, by understanding the relationship between environment and cancer and their potential response to the cancer therapeutics, maybe we can find the easy way to control the prevalence or treatment of the cancer. So that's the thing, and when I searched for the Cancer Atlas webpage, then what I could see was that actually there is a dramatic geographical diversity in also the prevalence of the cancer in different types, and also the number of, what is the leading cause of the deaths among the cancer across different countries. And if you look at the Asia, then you can also see that there are quite a lot of diversity that we have here. And also, this can be affected by multiple environmental regions. In some spaces, we are more prone to the viral infections and different type of the viruses, which could lead to the different prevalence of different type of cancers. And also, the social status and medical care could also affect the prevalence of the different cancer types. And we can also think about what is peculiar about Asia. And because most of cancer studies, many of them coming from the European countries, we can think about the cancers that shows the difference between European countries or other Western countries to the Asian countries. And esophageal cancer, it is known that it is more prevalent in certain countries, especially like China and Mongolia. And also, interestingly, if you look at the diagram here, then esophageal adenocarcinoma is prevalent in Western countries, whereas a squamous cell carcinoma type of the esophageal cancer is more prevalent in the Asian countries. And to address this question, in last day HCA Asia meeting, Natani and Yutaka, Ankur and Ungyang has suggested this flagship project, which is not officially funded yet, but this can be potentially thought of. So to focus on certain cancers and then collect the data from multiple countries and look into the tumor microenvironment. So some of this project is already going on by them with the private fundings, but today we can talk about how to expand from this. We can participate in this project, or we can open new ones, multiple ones, and think about how to coordinate. So I think that's the focus of today's discussion.
Yeah.
And
so I think, we're doing it together. Don't just hand it over to me.
Okay. Yeah.
So this gives you an idea of the flavor of what happened in 2023. So, it's a different group of people, there's more, I think this is a very big meeting this year. So I guess I just want to open up to the floor to discuss, what is it that we like to do? And some of that conversation happened yesterday, like, which cancer? So if we go to the next slide, right? I thought, maybe instead of saying which cancer, I thought it's important, maybe we talk about first, what is an important criteria for a flagship project to you, okay? So I'm hoping for people who want to have an opinion, if you want to have an opinion to talk about it, but I can talk briefly about these are the criteria. Is there any criteria that we miss? So it's actually very, very different in concept. The two that was highlighting in blue talks about let's identify something specific, right? Colorectal, gastric, that was mentioned yesterday. Do we want to focus on something? Or we should really look at like a pan-cancer profiling to look at variation in trend. It's fairly different. So I'm interested in the audience. What is important to you? If you rank this, what would you? So, in the thing, we have only a few words, but that's it, understanding the impact. And also, please think about it. How easy or hard is it to actually achieve some of these things? So what we like to think about underneath, okay, so while people are ranking and having an opinion, because you can change your opinion, I wonder whether anyone wants to share their thought about, what should focus, or basically, prompt for certain aspect should go up on top. Opinions? You look like you are.
I think it will be important to consider the critical mass and the number for each cancer type. And I think that you cannot go very broad a little bit everywhere and do a little bit of everything, but you really need to have a very good consideration on the numbers, and based on the capacity of the various groups, you probably need to focus on that. Yeah. I would say that it makes more sense. Also because it depends on the budget availability. But I would start with the focus, with something focused that is easier to convince the colleagues.
Sort of following on from that though, I think thinking about how you'd analyse this data. So if we're going to do multiple cancer types, what's the absolute minimum number of patients you need for each cancer type from each, and the number of countries that you're going to sample them from? Because rather than saying we have to focus on one or we can't go broad, if you say the criteria to be involved is we need to have at least this number of cancers from this number of patients from this number of countries, and maybe have some stats behind it as to whether it's powered appropriately.
Sorry. I have one that I wanted to bring up too. I have a few, so when I was working for a company, a few things that we've noticed is even within the same cancer, you actually see there's differences of how the genes are. For example, if we're getting the biobank data from mostly Ukrainian samples, we do see that these are the important genes that we need to be looking at for, let's say, lung cancer. But then we go to Asia, and actually it's completely different. So we also have to consider that although they're the same cancer type, even within that, we might want to consider separating them. Like, for example, even like you mentioned earlier, within Asia, there's also differences already because of the environment. So, like the Philippines, for example, is more Western compared to the rest. And China and Japan are very similar in that sense. And even within that, stratification, I think is very important. They did mention about the numbers, but at the same time, we do need to consider how within those numbers, which ones do we select, like population selection.
I think that's a very important point. And actually, Asia is very interesting in that sense because there are some genetics shared, but then industry and all the society is quite rapidly changing. So we have kind of a social experiment about how the same genetics is like differently reacting in terms of different type of the cancer. So I think that point is something that really can kind of say as advantage of studying cancer in Asian populations.
Okay, so sounds like people are looking for focus, and I have to say the most important criteria from the audience and people who are participating. Number one is actually sort of Asian cancer that has some unique epidemiology, so that is actually of interest. So that makes me go on to the second question, and this is a question that was asked yesterday, but a few people put up their hands, and I thought we'll ask it more specifically. Can you open up to the next one? So the next question is really what cancer type should HCA Asia focus on? So it's an open question, so we will generate a word cloud for it. So name your favorite cancer is what I'm asking. And so, go on.
I mean, no. Name your favorite cancer sounds quite...
Sorry,
Yeah.
it's my sense of bad humor. Name the cancer that you think it's most important for the Asian population, because we have unique epidemiology, or it's most impacted by special socio-economic situation in Asia or the environment in Asia. Also, I'm from Australia. We work on melanoma because I think this is like our national cancer. So there must be also a cancer where Asia as a community have strategic advantage and strategic strength associated with it. This is your community, please. Ooh, lung cancer. Please put on it. We will please voting. Have a look. What is your? I don't know. You have to ask mentee whether you're allowed. Does it allow you for multiple cancer? Well, you could.
No, I was.
Case for your cancer.
Okay, so I did put colorectal because coming from Japan, that's one of the biggest cancer concerns because, as we all know, Japan has a very specific type of diet. Well, it's changing recently, but this is a huge, huge problem that needs, it's unmet, really. Although there's a lot of therapies already out there, there's still a lot of room for improvement. But I was going to say, because I also wanted to put in pancreatic, just because it's really hard to diagnose. And it's one of those things that I feel like it would really benefit from if we do have H&E. And as you were mentioning, how this could actually be brought into the clinic where you have an H&E and you can actually get the gene expression. We can actually use the spatial data to be more, exactly, to make a difference. Like, we're not just looking for consistencies, we're looking for unique features that we can use later on for our models.
People to also think about is when you're thinking about this cancer, because this is a spatial, this is just not just a single cell RNA-seq discussion, it's a spatial discussion. So we want to think about cancer that potentially benefit from tumor microenvironment, immune environment. So something where it's not maybe heavily mutation-based. There's many different etiology associated with the cancer, so we should actually think about one that, spatial will make a difference. So have a think about that. If you want to change your answer, maybe you can. I will. That's okay, we hear. You've got pancreatic in. And yesterday, gastric cancer was in.
Small comment on the gastric cancer. So stomach cancer is actually very big in Japan. It's also very unique to Japan. So you look at Japan and Singapore, they're very different. So probably one of those things to consider there, whether this would be same cancer, but literally a different origin and different cancer. And how do we go later about the analysis putting this together?
Thank you. We see some support from Japan. I'm also interested, what about, Hong Kong, China, Korea,
Yeah.
Thailand? Is there anyone from those countries would like to speak up? Thank you.
Well, I'm more interested in lung cancer because that's the subject I'm studying, but I want to bring up a point that when you started the IDA project, there are a lot of accumulated data, single cell data, so you know like a level of variations. Of course, you did not know the connection, but we knew like the level of variability, but for the spatial data, we have no idea. So I think it's really difficult to say what's the minimum number. So the study we are aiming is a controlled study that we use the same technology so we can compare it with. But I think it may be better to look at less controlled data, but put together data and what's our expectation for the variability. Then we may have a better idea for those flagship project that we have controlled technology, so we can have a really good comparison between whatever cancer types or different continents or lifestyles, those stuff.
So, I mean, you brought up something really interesting. Are you suggesting to sort of leverage on what we have already? Right, so you may be saying we have the IDAT project, maybe that is specific in something, so is it to leverage on that so that we have that multimodality that we could integrate and sort of build on top of that?
Right. So before we make a plan, we may have a better idea of what we expect with gathering what we have, and well, there may be people who already have the data, I'm sure, a lot of data, and some people it may not be ready for sharing, but some may be ready for sharing, but we don't have a really good data sharing platform for the spatial data, so maybe starting to communicate what the data we have and see whether we can look at the data. It has to be like there has to be an easy common way to look at the data. So just doing a whole clustering together, it'll be difficult because a lot of different data. So we need some like transfer data rather than clustering, but label transfer, those type of things, and look at the data with a common method to just estimate the variability levels.
Yeah, agree. And I think that's such a really, really good point to make. And so can we ask for the slide to go back up one slide? So another slide? Yes? Oh, no.
Maybe many.
Oh, wait. So, don't
Like this?
keep going. That's it. So just put in the spatial and disease activity survey. Sorry, I just thought it was important. That was very much what you're saying. We need to know. We need an in-house survey of what we have. Okay, so please, I know there's a lot of QR code in the session, but please, if you can do this survey, that allows us to actually get a sense of what the data is out there. And you know, a little plug for my talk just then means that if you have H&E data, if there's a huge collection of H&E data, maybe we should think about also utilizing those to do some spatial prediction and then figuring out how we could move forward based on that information. Okay, survey again. So that was really good discussion, important. So let's go back. More countries? Yes. So is there more countries want to sort of talk about the cancer or suggestion of what you like? We heard from Japan, Korea, South Korea. I've spoken on behalf of Australia. China, Hong Kong, Philippines, anyone?
Singapore.
Singapore? Okay. Well, pardon?
I think Singapore is pretty interesting because that's what I'm saying.
Right.
But I was hoping to hear from Singapore because like there's a lot of groups coming in Singapore, right? The Chinese group, the Indian group, and whatnot.
true.
Like the diversity within Singapore, I think, is interesting to know what's going on there. So if there's any representative, we'd love to hear.
I think same idea actually goes for IDA. So in IDA, the Singaporean sample was really important in delineating what was the genetic difference. And also the original study about cancer epidemiology is about the people who migrate to the new place. So I think we can design very interesting sort of case control study focusing on Singaporean center.
Yeah, so I want to move on to sort of thinking about data collection. So while we keep things in mind, you know, what kind of data we want to collect, we talk about sample sizes. And look, I think these are important things to consider. So what is the next question?
Strategy for collaboration.
Yes. So I think two things need to think in mind. So to think about what are the strategies for collaboration, it's more like, should we focus on one cancer type? You know, should we bring in more computation, given the majority of people here are computation, bringing more computation into the collaboration, data sharing repository, spatial platform to think about. But if we go back to the other slide, keeping data collection in mind, it's an open-ended question, right? And I'm hoping that, so the reason we have this mentee is really if you're too shy to talk, you can type and express your view. But if you have an opinion, please put up your hand, grab microphone for me. But I'd like to have suggestion on what's a good platform to collaborate? Is it putting in resources to actually set up a data sharing platform so people can look at each other's data? Is it really creating a network so that we all can talk to each other, so that we can stay in the same room like this meeting? What do people think is a good strategy so that we could get a flagship project going? Is it a few people set up something?
First response came in.
Yeah.
So data sharing repository funded huge servers. Spatial data, we need like huge storage and servers. So actually, we really need to think about that strategy too. Yeah.
So I also like people to think, how do we do things economically? Funding is not trivial, it's hard. So collaboration, often, it's initial collaboration, it's that step and that leverage for bigger funding, right? So let's think, how can we get started? What would be a strategy to get started in terms of collaboration? Should we start a working group? Should we think about what we have? So if what we have and people who have a lot of information say, okay, let's come together. I don't know. Please put in and do people have any opinion to share?
There are many opinions coming in. So standardized spatial transcriptomics workflow for uniform data format and efficiency, and collaboration and authorship framework, clear expectations for involvement, and economically valuable goal. Yeah.
I was just gonna say word cloud. Has it been done within the HCA?
You've been working with the cloud like Amazon
Yeah,
AWS?
pretty much putting things on the cloud, because now it's getting really expensive. The problem with the cloud is, how you can manage the expenses. But as we know, for example, let's say within even our lab, we have some sort of capacity to probably have a lot of like single cell data, whatever, but clearly not spatial data, right? So that's like building a server who's gonna keep track of it, how you're gonna get the money for it. So cloud appears like a platform with a lot of then security issues. Would people feel safe to upload? But sorry, can I ask some other question? For sample collections and stuff, is there a model within HCA to actually, do you guys actively reach out to collaborators? Because here it feels a bit like reaching out to certain clinical people would also help. Am I missing something? I've never heard of HCA outside having friends in there, or not strictly speaking members. So is there? Yeah, something. I feel like here without clinicians, it's going to be extremely difficult to get the sample.
Can I actually mention something before the question? So I'm going to make, hold on, maybe you answer the sample collection question first, no? Okay, hold on. Let me just, there's a lot of things going on, okay, no? Number one is about platform. I just want to draw the attention is there is capacity, that's a problem, but I actually think what's not mentioned here is a more important problem is actually ethics that's associated with every single country. So currently I'm doing a cardio project in Australia, like incorporating 9 different large-scale studies. So putting all this information in a single thing, in a single repository, it's not trivial. So but that being said, there's actually a lot of work that's been done. So Broad have some strategy. So there is data lake and data. So there are actually strategy to talk about how can information be jointly accessed and ethics being managed, right? So happy to talk more, but there are some solutions out there to deal with that. And that is even before you think about big spatial data, is if you can't share those important meta information. So we would have to think about that kind of discussion first. But there are solutions to simplify that project out there, both public solution and private solutions for data lake and data ecosystem. Second question from Jordan, that's the thing, is about sample access, correct? Do you want to speak louder?
Yeah, maybe I'll just repeat it. So I don't know if I would feel if this is my first time to the meeting, which it is actually, and I don't know directly Alistair, Pierre, or Jay, I would wonder how, people can actually join. How can we bring on collaborators from the clinics or dry people? But, we have connections slowly opening up to the hospital, which is the biggest in Kanagawa. And I don't think people have heard so much about the HCA. What would be the mechanism to actually putting this together? Because we cannot provide samples, but we could potentially bring collaborators who would provide the samples. How to go about this?
Okay, so open question to people here, especially members of HCA.
To join the Human Cell Atlas, you can go to the website and happily, very easily join. For the data, I think that we have also on the portal, we have the control access for some set of data, particularly, we have already started that and it is working. So I think that there are measures in place to really favor this. Of course, with human samples, it's always more complicated, but there is this option for control access.
And
let's say we came up with a stomach cancer today, whatever cancer, right? And then I want to reach out to people. Do they get registered through you guys? How do you bring people on board? How would that work?
I think that's the point of this session.
Okay.
So the reason why we have a breakout session for all the HCA meeting is for anyone who's studying cancer, like here, would have a clinical collaborators, or yourself can be the clinicians. And you can come to this breakout session, and in this questionnaire, you can put in your name. You want to be the leader of, for example, colorectal cancer. You can provide this sample in this site, or I know the good collaborator. And that way we meet each other, we discuss each other, and that becomes a flagship project for the next year. So that's possible. And one thing that we can think about is that actually through the single cell studies, in HCA, we have built many of this network already internationally, especially in Asia. The AIDA consortium has already built like sample collection and all the IRBs for the single cell data. So we can reach out to them and then ask them, like we are interested in, for example, like gastric cancer. Do you know any good gastric cancer clinician who can provide sample in Thailand, Singapore? So in that way, I think we can build the next round of the network. So it's all about expanding the network.
just to say that HCA actually have a Slack site. So there is actually social channel. And so that's the Slack site is, you could connect with all the members on there. So there is actually a social media platform that you could actually, we should have put, maybe I'll talk to Angela about putting, so there's a Slack channel for HCA that you can actually join. I'm actually not sure there is a specific channel for Asia. Hopefully there, if not, there should be. Is there a specific channel for Asia? Yep. Can you talk more about that?
Yes. Are you looking for one now? Yeah. I see.
What did you? No, what did Yoshi say?
He's putting in the information about
The Slack.
yeah, closing slide.
So in the closing slide, there will be a Slack that you can join. So I joined the HCA Asia Slack site. There's a lot of communication on there, and there's a channel specific, my understanding, for Asia if you want to have a more Asia-specific discussion. There's actually a slide for Australian too.
I guess the question, one of the questions is like how it operates. What are the engagement rules of engagement, and also we're talking about starting a new network or potentially setting up multiple new networks. Is there an already established framework for each of these networks in terms of how you can be involved, authorship, data sharing, all of this sort of stuff? So I can go say, yeah, I want to be in that. How do I actually get involved? And if I do provide samples or do provide data, what rules sort of govern my involvement and when the data eventually gets published?
Okay, I don't think that there is, a centralized group of people that will authorize you to go ahead or not. I think it's going to be a bottom up, and probably you and a few others will decide to start a collaboration. We'll decide how to fund this collaboration, where to go, Chan Zuckerberg or agencies in your countries, and essentially created this group as a bottom up, and then you can join and be a part of the big picture. So it's mostly you know how the fountain works, which is centralized around one institute, but actually this is very much bottom up. Okay.
So I just want to tell you that there's already kind of a collaborative effort going on for the lung, liver, colon cancer by Ungyang, Angkul, Yutaka, and also Natini. And it's not like it's a centralized process. They just talk to each other in last meeting, and then they said, oh, maybe we can collaborate on this angle by sharing the data. And then it happens. And then I heard that there has been a lot of issue with the logistics. For example, first they want to ship the sample from across countries, which was obviously impossible because of the ethics. So they have a sort of the initial experience. So if you want to form a new network, maybe you can reach out to them and then discuss about how to really just expand this or elaborate on this. And I think that's the reason why it's important to set up a very clear focus for the publication and for the authorship. You should come up with a very good angle, for example, like Singaporean and comparing the other maybe 3 out groups. And in that case, all the people will know what we are doing, and then they can all share the co-authorship, because that's the heavily question-based and hypothesis-based data collection process. So I think it can work in that way, yeah.
And if that is, lung was really popular, you could also just join them. That's probably the easiest way. I think it's expanding. We don't always have to recreate new things. Yeah. If something align, please join it. And so I think we get onto that discussions. I just want to open up for people. The next question on Menti is strategies for sharing know-how, right? So what I mean is that was precisely what Elle was asking. How do we do so? Do we worry about publication? Do we worry about questions? How do we get computational people involved? And so from a computational person's angle, often we also like things that's creative. We can use the data to ask further, deeper questions. So I like people to actually share what are ideas of sharing your know-how. So Slack was a channel, right? Where maybe it's just for people to group. Is it GitHub for code? Is it by publication? Is it by creating more meetings? So what I mean is, if you want to understand selection of spatial analysis platform, which is the right platform, what about technical benchmark study? How do I get my things to work? If you have experience or you know a strategy, you can share your information with others. Love to hear.
There's an open-end questionnaire in Menti, so you can type in if you want.
That's right. So please tell the group and also type. We're making you working really hard here.
Why you are thinking? I think one common concept that I see repeatedly from the collected questionnaire answers are that we want some data format harmonization and like data sharing strategy. So this flagship project not only necessarily has to be the data collection. We can think about just the data harmonization or computational sort of a flagship project, thinking about how to coordinate the already collected data in each countries and then compare them and develop a kind of formats, like easy format that can work on multiple spatial formats.
Yeah, so listening to everyone here, I have to say, and I put up this, I think this is an unsolved problem. And if you are a computational person or method development in the audience, especially young student, I would say this is the question. How do we actually enable extraction of information of data without going through the pain of all these batch correction? So integration can happen at multi-level, right? One level is you get the raw data, you normalized it, and you find the lower embedding. A lot of people feel that that's the only way to go about doing it. That's not true. You could actually look at relationship between genes, relationship between proteins. You could actually integrate at a slightly higher level, at the pathway level, at the network level, that actually naturally may bypass some of these platform-to-platform differences, region-to-region differences, or even go one level above. Look at the results and see how results can be shared and uniformly analyzed by meta-analysis, right? That's how people have done it in clinical studies for many, many years, right? Standard meta-analysis. Could those strategies, not utilizing regression, but maybe with deep learning, now can actually help people where you have such diversity of labs, platform, to actually resolve that problem. And that could be some idea where we could come together and say, you know what, I've done my lab, I've done my data, and you have too, right? The data is all there. How do we get the most out of it? So that's a computational challenge that we could actually look into too. Thank you. We're about to read out some of the sharing.
So there has been 8 responses about how to share the know-how. So index of bioinformatics method created by HCA Asia members like Jin. So we might need that. And data quality verification, how to QC the data. And workshops on processing spatial transcriptomics and virtual seminar series, short-term exchanges. And GigaScience Spatial Omics Method series is a good way to have all the method benchmarked and in one place. So I think maybe we can share this link in the reporting.
We will definitely share the strategy, right? So there's also single cell open problems that was supported by CZI, where they're doing a huge amount of benchmark on many different things. These days they look at cell segmentation, simulation method, and those kind of benchmark results would actually also help a lot of decision. And I wonder whether that could go broader. There should be a central repository for other ways of sharing information. So Al, do you want to talk about a bit, sorry to point out, yeah, you talk about VisGen, you talk about how you actually capture, so what's the sharing platform on that?
Yeah, screen grabs. No. Look. In terms of like Cosmics data, when we published, we dumped this on Zenodo because we had the data plus the code used to analyze it, so it made it a little bit easier for people to access. I did discuss to the lady from Nature Communications, I'm not sure she's in the audience, about using Figshare as well. For some of these, VisGen and Cosmics, I think they're quite heavy files. Xenium's a lighter file format. I'm not sure if that's what you're asking. I mean, the other thing was, and I've put it in there, so especially for segmentation, there's multiple methods for segmentation. There's multiple methods for spraying, yes, and multiple methods of spraying single cell references onto a spatial context. Now, Liana Plus for cell-to-cell communication, basically what they've done is they've put them all into one big wrapper, so you can compare the predictions using different underlying databases and different underlying methods all in the same platform. So if we had some sort of framework platform for segmentation, and one thing we could do is like, here's some data for segmentation that's been created within the consortium. I'm sure we could easily share a few samples without any issue. We've got H&Es, we've got in situ hybridization based data, or even HD or stomics data to work up these methods and benchmark. I think having it as a common benchmarking framework, because I mean you saw some beautiful different approaches, and there's a whole bunch out in the posters as well. Lots of different people are trying this. If you could put it all on the same, like in a dream challenge. So you've got the same data all within one framework. Anyway.
That's an idea too. Would HCA Asia member want to come together, create enough data to put up a dream challenge? That's a platform that would raise profile. It would actually help. It would resolve some of the computational challenge that we have.
Actually, some responses were about that, like Kaggle style, open innovation competitions, or we can use offline hackathons. And maybe I can kind of advertise one hackathon that is already happening in Korea, led by Junil here and Hita. Maybe you want to tell us a little bit about the zigzag hackathon?
Yeah, we held a hackathon for analyzing same data and in South Korea in last August. We have some bioinformatics team in South Korea, and they have their own method to analyze the data, and we gather in one place, and we did a hackathon 4 days, and in the last day we share failure or success of the algorithm.
And we want to maybe make it international. So that in zigzag like hackathon or symposia, we already have invited like Fabian Thais and like other people as keynote speakers also. So they might actually approach you to initiate a new kind of international hackathon project.
I don't know, there's a lot of hackathon out there. Sorry. I think I'm ready. But I'm all for looking for a strategy that raise certain profile. So there are, so Dream Challenge really is one that I think, worth, and when the ones have, say, a publication that can be linked to it, that also really raises the option. So that's one way. Go on.
Just sort of a follow on from that. I mean, at the Oz single cell meetings, in previous years, people have donated data, like put data made available, and there's several challenges posted before the meeting. So you could potentially do this for HCA Asia. You could say, okay, we're going to dump some data out 3 months, 6 months ahead of the next meeting, and these are the challenges, and the best methods are presented here. And that would actually get engagement, I think.
Yes, I think that's that's a note we will pass on to next year's organizers, whoever they may be. But that's a really great strategy these days. We link a bit of this to bring that computational and data people, because that's concrete to actually get things going. Okay, so as we are thinking, and I think that's actually really important, next thing, you know, it's towards the end, we're thinking about funding. Funding, I know, this is the tough topic, isn't it? I'm happy, let's think about funding in relationship to raising profile, strategy for flagship project, and ideas of questions that people wanted to ask. So I'm just basically opening up the floor. This is the last mentee questions, I promise you. So if people have, you know, strategy, so I'm not talking about, you know, so strategy, or if you know of international grant call that actually helps, that's strategies to put it together. So feel free to share your knowledge on that front. I also want to make it an open question. Is there any discussion that people want to talk about, how we can formulate such flagship project? Do we join what 2023 people do? Or if you have something interesting that you like to make a pitch for? My pitch is anyone who wants to try my method on HNE, I'm here to talk to you. Anything else? No, silent.
I mean, in this final because this is final mentee question, right? So
The discussion doesn't have
yeah,
to
but
stop with the final
maybe
mentee
you
question.
can, if you want to share like your idea about potential international collaboration projects, and maybe you can type in your like email
Ideas
address,
in the funding.
ideas, so that we can connect you later. Maybe if you share the common kind of cancer or interest.
Yeah, so this is
Yeah.
what I think. Any interest and funding, somehow they are linked, right? It's hard to do something. So my only suggestion would be like, you know, do people want to come together to do a dream challenge? I don't have data. So I can support some data integration to help that thing go into a hackathon. Yes.
Regarding to the grant or funding, and I'm now working for the funding agency in Japan, and so now in Japan now now we want to more fund it on the young scientists, educate young scientists. So this time we are now collaborating with Anchor about liver cancer ST analysis, and we have some exchange program of our scholarships, and we apply such kind of scholarships exchange program, and now that I don't know that it can be successful or not, but we have some kind of international exchanging program. It's probably working well to educate it about young scientists, and also the provide of opportunity to access of the new high technologies of the new bioinformatics analysis. So that's one way of the funding.
Thank you. I think that's a great idea. Like rather than the PI, to think about exchange of students across the different Asia region, including Australia, that to be able to, utilize the students' movement as the facilitator to get collaboration and relationship network going. That's fantastic. Thank you. Any other suggestion? Any other ideas? Anything else? Is there anything?
There's a STOMIX grant for data production. So there's another link for that. So maybe you can, yeah.
Well, if not, I would say, is there any comments from anyone in the audience? If not, let me thank everyone for participating on the various format, and thank you to Jong, my partner in crime. It has been fantastic knowing all of you and having this session, and hopefully we'll put all this together and report it in the afternoon session. Let's go for lunch before everyone get there.
Thank you.